Senegal has done what many African nations have long feared to even attempt. In a move that is shaking the very foundations of post-colonial power in West Africa, the Senegalese government has officially declared that all French companies operating within its borders must now pay their taxes in Senegal, not in France. This is not just an economic policy shift. It is a declaration of sovereignty, a quiet revolution against decades of hidden economic control that has chained African progress to European interests. You are watching AfriPlus News Channel. If you haven't yet, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more important updates like this one. For over 60 years, the shadow of French economic dominance has loomed over Francophone Africa. Many French companies, from energy giants to telecommunications and infrastructure firms, have operated freely across the continent, generating billions of dollars annually. Yet much of that money never truly benefits Africa, because taxes and profits are often funneled back to France. Why should African labor, African land, and African consumers sustain French wealth while African economies remain trapped in debt and underdevelopment? Senegal's new decision breaks this cycle. For the first time, the government is saying, enough. French corporations will no longer use Senegalese soil as a mere extraction ground. They must now contribute directly to Senegal's economy through taxes paid within the country. This is an act of economic justice and national dignity.
The tax deals with Europe, especially France. The biggest scam in Africa. Almost every African country has signed a double taxation agreement with a Western nation. On paper it sounds fair. Avoid paying tax twice. But here's the reality. European companies pay tax in Europe, not in Africa, even if the money is made from African land and resources. And it gets worse. Imagine a French company gets a license to mine gold in African country. That license gives them legal ownership of the site. They extract the gold, sell it for billions, and because of the tax agreement, they pay zero income tax in Africa. No royalty, no profit tax, nothing. So even though the gold came from Africa, the African country earns nothing from its own gold. The same thing is happening with cobalt, lithium oil, you name it. Meanwhile, African companies trying to operate in Europe, they are forced to open local branches, follow European tax laws, and pay full taxes on no exemptions, no loopholes.
Now France
will France accept this quietly, or will they attempt to retaliate through diplomatic or financial pressure, as they have done in the past when African nations dared to stand up for themselves?
We are one or second in the Eurozone. Now when I take Europe, and especially the EU as a whole, but it's true as well for UK, we have this issue in terms of business model. Why? Because we had low-cost energy thanks to Russia, production thanks to Central and Eastern European countries with quite low costs, a market for exports, China, and a geopolitical umbrella, US. These pillars are being completely revised, totally.
Yes.
And it's no more valid. So we have to reinvent. What and how? By creating much more value on our own, by being much more innovative, by creating much more jobs and jobs with value, good jobs, I would say, on our continent. The key point is deliver much more innovation and productivity policy, public and private. So the second key reform is to accelerate decarbonization and especially our electricity policy, because through renewables and nuclear energy, we can deliver low carbon, sovereign, and low-cost energy, which is much more than importing gas and fossil fuels. Third, we need much more investment based on common budget, and in my view, I mean, based on public reports and figures, we need 1 trillion more in terms of budget, in terms of spending. And in parallel, we have to make the capital market union a reality.
The reality is that this single policy challenges one of France's deepest held tools of neocolonial control, financial dependency. By forcing French companies to pay taxes locally, Senegal is taking back control of its economic data. its fiscal strength, and its right to decide how its resources are used. For decades, this control was masked by complex agreements and economic partnerships that heavily favored French interests. But how long can France continue to call itself an ally of Africa while draining the continent's wealth through corporate loopholes and exploitative contracts? This bold decision is likely to inspire a domino effect across West Africa. Countries like Côte d'Ivoire, which have all recently expressed frustration with French interference, may now see Senegal's move as a practical model for regaining control of their own economies. Could this be the beginning of a wider economic liberation movement across Francophone Africa? And if that happens, how far is France willing to go to protect its business interests? Beyond the politics, this decision touches the lives of ordinary Senegalese citizens. Every franc paid in local taxes can now be reinvested into education, healthcare, infrastructure, and job creation. It could reduce reliance on international aid and build real, sustainable economic independence. But one must ask, why did it take so long for African governments to realize that the key to freedom is not just political independence, but economic sovereignty? France has often justified its economic presence in Africa under the pretense of cooperation and development. Yet cooperation cannot exist when one partner grows wealthy while the other remains perpetually indebted. For how long will France continue to disguise exploitation as partnership? How many more African generations must struggle under the illusion of independence while their national wealth is siphoned abroad? Senegal's stand also exposes the hypocrisy of Western nations that preach democracy and fairness, but maintain exploitative economic systems in their former colonies. These systems, built on unequal contracts and tax privileges, are designed to keep African nations dependent and impoverished. But now, as African governments awaken to their rights and their people demand accountability, could France's economic empire in Africa finally be crumbling? The symbolism of this move cannot be overstated. It sends a message that Africa is no longer afraid to rewrite the rules. Senegal has chosen dignity over dependency, sovereignty over submission, and fairness over fear. And as this story unfolds, the world will be forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Africa no longer seeks permission to control its destiny. In the end, this is about more than taxes. It is about respect, equality, and justice. It is about the end of economic slavery hidden behind polite diplomacy. The question now is, will other African nations have the courage to follow Senegal's example, or will they continue to bow under the weight of foreign influence? This decision by Senegal marks a turning point in African history. It reminds the world that independence is not a one-time event, but a continuous struggle, a daily demand for fairness and control over one's own future. If the rest of Africa stands united behind such reforms, the balance of global power may finally begin to shift. And if France truly values partnership, it must learn to treat Africa not as a possession, but as an equal. Thank you for watching this AfriPlus news analysis. What are your thoughts on Senegal's decision to demand tax justice from French companies? Do you believe this will spark similar actions across Africa? Drop your thoughts respectfully in the comment section. Your opinion matters and helps us build a stronger, more informed community. If you appreciate our work and want to help us continue producing independent African-focused analysis, please consider joining our channel membership and sending us a super thanks. Your support keeps us going and ensures that the African voice remains heard across the world. Disclaimer: this analysis is based on verified reports and available public information. It is intended purely for educational and informational purposes and does not promote hatred, violence, or discrimination against any nation, organization, or individual. AfriPlus News Channel upholds YouTube's community guidelines and encourages respectful dialogue among all viewers.